Well, good morning, everybody. The Ohio State Buckeyes coming off an awfully impressive victory, 59-31 over the Purdue Boilermakers. This was a game that was supposed to trip up the Buckeyes or at least be a bit challenging against a team that has beaten two top five programs in the country this year. I guess Ohio State didn't get the memo because that was as complete a game as Ohio State has played all season against as high-quality opponent as they've seen all season. What we learned about last night's game, it's coming up next on Buckeye Breakdown. We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All-Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here.
Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Buckeye Breakdown. Certainly glad to have you on board for this beautiful fall Sunday morning. I'm Brendan Gulick, along with our coach, Tommy Zagorski. And I'll tell you what, Coach, this was the kind of statement game that I think I was waiting to see. I've always known what this offense was capable of, high-end, high-octane type stuff. We talked about it last week, how much Garrett Wilson, was missed against Nebraska. I think the fact that Wilson played the way he did yesterday after missing the Nebraska game where the Buckeyes still won and weren't really in danger of losing. But it just, to me, it really showed his impact and what this team is missing when he's not on the field. So thankfully he's healthy and good and obviously – plays at a ridiculously high level. And defensively, we're going to talk a little bit about it, but, I guess I'm not sounding the alarm bell the way a lot of fans are right now. I'm walking away from this game saying, geez, I learned that the Buckeyes are right there and ready to compete for a national championship.
Yeah, Brendan, good morning. I would say that to the Garrett Wilson comment, the big three. And anytime you see this in any sport, when you talk about the big three in basketball, you talk about the big three now for Ohio State. Garrett Wilson reaped the benefits of the Buckeyes capitalizing on mistakes. And a lot of mistakes were made by the Purdue Boilermakers early and often, and what great football teams do. And this is why Ryan Day wakes up this morning with a little bit of a smirk on his face, is that the fact his guys capitalized on these mistakes and really put Purdue away in a game that they knew they couldn't win early. And that touchdown that they had early, we thought, maybe Purdue's going to hang around. But really, Ryan Day's team put these guys away early. It was really exciting to see, from the ability of the Buckeyes to grow, to hit those big home run plays early and often. And then defensively, it almost looked like we were back. It took a step back on the outside because we gave up a lot. We gave up a lot of yards in the pass game. And really the Buckeyes did a nice job of staying behind this offense, and not giving up those explosive plays. So it was exciting from there. And then really, my biggest takeaway from the game was that two defensive lines that we celebrated going into this game as if they were going to go at each other, one-on-one and so on and so forth. Really was hard to watch. There was not a lot of production from those defensive lines, and it was interesting to see the way the Buckeyes attacked George Karlaftis day in and day out and play in and play out last night.
I'll tell you what, Karlaftis is a really good place to start. This made me laugh. Still waiting for Purdue's Greek Freak to make a play. George Karlaftis is a really good player, and I don't want to negate the fact just because he didn't play well yesterday. I still think he is a very good player, but I think he got exposed a little bit yesterday against an offense that was not fearful of him at all, respected him and his ability, but I don't think Ohio State said, okay, we got a game plan so much around this guy because he is a total game wrecker. He was as pedestrian yesterday as he's been at any point all season. And I think that speaks to a couple different things, and you can elaborate on this, but for me, part of it's the play calling, because I think Ohio State did a good job of making sure C.J. Stroud didn't have to sit in the pocket for 5 or 6 seconds where a guy of his capability eventually may get home, even though he's had some issues doing that this year. And two, I think it speaks to the quality of the offensive line play yesterday for the Buckeyes, which was markedly better than it was the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. We'll start with Karlaftis. Brendan, you and I talked about it all week. We watched the film on this guy, and I joked off the air. I go, I don't think he's going to be a factor in tomorrow's game. And this was, on Friday we talked about this. Thursday we talked about it. And watching the game yesterday, he has moments where he's sudden. The Travion Henderson touchdown run, as I know TV, they went back to the tight copy on it. He jumped out of his gap. He didn't play his gap responsibility when it came to football. And that was why that linebacker had to scrape over the top of that. I mean, his job is he has the B gap on that run. And the Buckeyes are running the mid-zone play. Travion takes off. Karlaftis tries to jump across Thayer Munford's head. Thayer Munford drives him out, moves his feet through the play, does a nice job of adapting and adjusting on the run. And those guys do drills. If you went to a Buckeye practice, Stud's going to have those guys, feet, drive, and they're going to drive, and the guy's going to move at the last second, and you got to run your feet with them. I mean, that's exactly that. That's drill tape in motion right there as you're going through it. Stud probably had his GA, Cody Kennedy, pick it up this morning and go, hey, make sure you get that clip on our drill tape. Yeah, great, awesome. But then Henderson takes off, and that linebacker, and we talked about this going into it, the linebackers weren't as athletic as the linebackers we've seen the last couple of weeks. I mean, really, going back to Indiana's linebacker corps, probably a better group. And I know yesterday they looked, ooh. And then you got Penn State's linebacker group, really, really talented. And even last week's Nebraska linebacker group, a really great room. Purdue's linebackers, not so much. And that's where yesterday, when those linebackers tried to scrape over the top, they couldn't get there in time. And that's where Travion Henderson was able to make that run and go from it. I mean, here's one thing to look at that defense. Purdue's starting safety yesterday, Brendan, Chris Jefferson. Do you know where Chris Jefferson played last year? Do you have any idea?
I don't, actually.
This is where it's great. Chris Jefferson, and I'm gonna go down a little story about Chris Jefferson. Number 17 for Purdue last night. And Jefferson is a local Ohio kid. He had five solo tackles, 2 assisted tackles, and was the only person with a pass breakup for Purdue in that game. Chris Jefferson started for the Findlay Oilers last year. Wait a second. You mean the Findlay Oilers? Congratulations to the Findlay Oilers anyways. They won the GMAC last night. Chris Jefferson had come out of high school with one Division I offer, Eastern Kentucky University. How do I know that? I watched him play basketball. I offered him on the spot. He came and visited us at EKU. We filled up at defensive back. Chris called me and tried to commit to us. Chris, I don't have a spot for you. Chris goes to Findlay. He's a 2-time All-American. He entered the transfer portal and starts for the Purdue Boilermakers yesterday. So to show you where they're getting their talent from, trying to find guys to go play through this game, that's the difference. Yesterday, Ohio State lined up with a secondary full of guys that were All-Americans. I played in this Army All-American game. I played in this All-American game. I played in this All-American game. Chris Jefferson might have played in the East-West Cuyahoga County Greater Cleveland Football Coaches Association All-Star game. He wasn't on any watch list for those games. And that's where you saw the difference between Purdue and Ohio State. And the reason I say that is this. I love Chris. I love his father, David. I love his mother, Kathy. They're great people. They sent him to a great school like Benedictine, and he's done a great job for himself. He's made himself a name in football that probably he didn't think he had when he was a freshman or sophomore in high school. But the reason I go down that story is because yesterday you saw 2 teams where recruiting is so important. So important. Why did George Karlaftis go to Purdue? I don't know. He came back from Greece. He lived in West Lafayette, Indiana. He probably didn't want to go anywhere else. And his story, as you look at it yesterday, that guy probably could end up in a lot of other places. He wouldn't have started for the Buckeyes yesterday. And you saw a Purdue team who's really well coached, who plays hard at times. At times, I say this, because I was disappointed in the rally of them to the football, especially with 6, the kid out of Cass Tech. His name escapes me right now. He got caught up in the games that he didn't need to get caught up into. And it really took Purdue out of the game. Capitalized on turnovers. You pulled out of the game. And then Karlaftis just was irrelevant, Brendan. I mean, his one thing, and I'll switch it over to you, but his one moment where he had his play, the Buckeyes didn't care that much about him. Jeremy Ruckert on a shot play is protecting him one-on-one. And I know I'm an O-line guy. Anytime you twist the shoulders, they may call it. That was a bad holding call.
Really bad
holding call. Like Ryan Day, they get to submit a report to the Big Ten today. And Ryan Day probably doesn't have time to do it. Probably one of these other guys, or Antonio, one of the guys that are in the facility, he's going to go, hey, can you get that clip and get that submitted? And the Big Ten Conference will come back and say, yeah, it was a tough one. We apologize for it. I mean, it's like it's terrible. It's a really interesting way. They're going to talk to that official and go, hey, like, look at the situation. Was that really necessary? Was he going to make the play? I don't think so. And when you drive a guy to the ground, it's tough. But sorry.
Yeah. No, that's an awesome story on Jefferson. It's one Division I offer. I guess you would know anything about it. That's fantastic. And by the way, folks, I didn't know that story coming in, so that was full on live education. Love that. Look, I guess when you bring up Purdue's effort, defensively, I agree with you. There were times where I thought it was lacking a little bit. Offensively, I think they're a really solid football team. It's amazing to me that Aiden O'Connell was not a particularly highly recruited cat either. I mean, he throws a good ball. He gets it out of his hand very quickly, and some of that is probably by design. I think we knew going into this game David Bell was going to get his touches, and I mean, if you could have a quiet 100 yards, he did. He never made a reception longer than 23. He had 11 catches for just over 100 yards. To me, that's ideal. That's a great day. Don't let your opponent's most explosive, best playmaker take the top off the back of your defense. A lot of people are ripping the Buckeye defense this morning, and I get it. They gave up 31 points. They gave up 481 yards of offense. I'm pretty hesitant to jump on that bandwagon, and I'm really interested on your thoughts because I think it's twofold. First of all, there were a lot of moments yesterday where Ohio State rushed 3 and dropped 8 into coverage. If you're putting that little pass rush on an opposing quarterback, one, it's because you are choosing to do that, not because you can't get home. And two, guys are going to get open. I think it was a scheme thing. I think it was the offense has played so well. Let's just not give up home run game-changing plays because we've scored 50 points. We've passed the eye test today, and we're going to win. So don't give Purdue any hope by ripping off a 40 or 50-yard play that was avoidable. I think that thought process was a big reason why the Buckeyes gave up some of these little things. It's the full body of work. I wasn't bothered yesterday at all by the 31 points or the 480 yards of offense. I really, truly wasn't bothered by it. But I understand people's criticisms.
Yeah, Brandon, part of it is, how quickly Ohio State jumped out in this game. We blinked yesterday, and it was 21-7. And I think what happened defensively for the Buckeyes is they decided there were two things they didn't want to have happen in this game. They didn't want to let David Bell get over the top of him because he has the ability to do that. They did not want to let him be the one that was deciding, how this game was going to go. I believe they threw to him 17 times. He ended up with 11 catches and, like you said, a very quiet 103 yards. And the counter end of it is where it's really exciting for the Buckeyes is you watch the development and the growth of Denzel Burke. Denzel Burke had 11 tackles yesterday. He led the Buckeyes in tackles. He broke up one pass, that they threw that direction. But for the most part, Denzel Burke played inside leverage and played off coverage. When he did that the entire game, what he basically conceded, and the Buckeyes conceded at the beginning of the game, was they said, we're going to let you throw those little intermediate passes to him. We're going to let you get 5. We're going to let you get 6. We're going to let you get 7 yards. We're not going to let you get the home run plays that, like you said, Brendan, breathe life into your offense. And really, that's where, they tried the little quick, the cute play where they had, the offensive line on one side and they tried to do a trick play. It wasn't there. There were different things that they tried to get into. They probably had more trick plays up their sleeve, but the game got so far out of hand. They said, you know what, we're good. We'll save it for another day. Don't waste it on something you're not going to have. I thought that Ohio State's defensive game plan was probably a little bit more aggressive on paper. When they realized that they were up so much, they decided to play a little bit less aggressive. And like you said, Brendan, there were times they sent 3. There were times they sent 4. Yesterday, they said, we're going to let Aiden O'Connell set his feet. We're going to play coverage behind it, and we're going to make that kid beat us with his arm. And really what they thought was, hey, you know what? He's not that good of a player. Well, he threw for 390 yards. He was 40 of 52. His stat line was incredible. He threw for 4 touchdowns. It was a nice day for him. If you just look at that box score snippet, you go, wow, pretty good day for him. But realistically, they didn't realize what was happening on the other side of the field. And I think at that point, Ohio State's like, why draw up all these exotic blitzes? Why pressure this guy? We know we've got this game in hand rather. Let's keep these guys in front of us. Let's not give anything away, any blitzes we have or any different coverage, mix or adjustments we have. Just keep them in front of you. Let them eat up the clock. Let them get themselves out of it and play decent red zone defense. Yes, they gave up 30-plus points. They gave up 31 points yesterday. But when you do that, it's really hard to be upset with your defense when you scored 59 points. You scored 59 points and you punted once in the game.
Yeah.
Now, the counter to that could be Purdue only punted twice in this game. But Purdue turned the ball over so many times as if they as if they were punting. So I think when you see that as you're going through it, it's a really, really it was a really interesting game yesterday. I'm not sounding the alarms. They choked out the run game, which they've done. They did it with a soft box the entire day. And really, to see guys step up and make plays at different times of the game, it was important to see it. Unfortunately, I know Ohio State fans, where they're upset is the defensive line didn't get home yesterday. You have this incredible defensive line, and really the touchdown pass, Tariq Smith got, held beyond belief on it. He was literally tackled by Eric Miller, the right tackle, who's an Ohio kid, a kid out of Mason, who rotated in and out yesterday. He started at right tackle yesterday. They moved him in and out, and then, he got abused on that play in regards to them grabbing around his neck and pulling him down to the ground. And he still had a hand where, if you remember, I don't know if you guys saw this, O'Connell moved the ball quickly to throw it. That was really the one time I think he felt pressured at all. And really, Ohio State said, we're going to play coverage all day.
Again, last night in our instant analysis show, I read a bunch of comments about and heard from some folks about, this defense is not good enough to beat elite teams. It's like, I get it. I understand the frustration. I really do. And there were moments yesterday I'm like, all right, that's annoying. Another first down. But I really think it was by design. When your offense plays at the level these guys are playing at, I don't want to jump yet and say they can beat anybody, including Georgia, because I want to see what Ohio State does against Michigan State and Michigan the next couple of weeks before I take that kind of a leap, especially against Michigan, because their defense has been pretty good this year. But when Ohio State's not turning the ball over, you're putting that much less pressure on your defense to be perfect in a sport where you give up points. It's so rare to see a defense like Georgia's defense that has dominated all season long against, for the most part, pretty quality teams.
Who gave up 17 yesterday against Tennessee, and at a point in that game, in the midway through the first half, people were starting to sit there going, wait a second. The Nealon effect was in full for about a quarter and a half of that game. But I didn't mean to interrupt, Brendan. But
no, you're right. It's true. They were losing at the end of the first quarter.
Right.
I don't think anybody is truly unbeatable. You got to have the right mix of talent and scheme. And there's an element of luck a little bit with everything, right? But when Ohio State is causing turnovers like they did yesterday, and I pointed this out too, obviously the fumble recovery by Cage and then immediately the long touchdown run from Henderson, those are game-altering, game-changing, momentum-shifting plays. And then, on the kickoff, we don't talk nearly enough about Ohio State's coverage unit. They are really, really good. You don't get to see them a lot because, so many fair catches are called for. But the fumble recovery yesterday when Purdue botched the short kickoff was a perfect example of how you have to play a perfect game to beat Ohio State. Jeff Brohm said after the game that they were lucky to only give up 59 points to the Buckeyes yesterday. The reason that happened is because they limited Ohio State's possessions in the second half. To your point earlier, Ohio State punted once, and it was on a drive that they shouldn't have punted because they had a penalty that negated a big play. I look at where Ohio State is right now. They are an elite team. The Buckeyes are one of the elite teams in college football. And there are only 4 teams that make the playoffs. And I'm telling you right now, if Ohio State keeps playing like this, they're obviously going to get in. And they are not going to be the 4 seed. Because if they beat Michigan State and Michigan the next 2 weeks, who are both going to be top 10 teams, wherever they end up, 6, 7, 5, 8, wherever they're at. If they beat those 2 teams and they beat a ranked team in the Big Ten championship game, the Buckeyes are not going to be the number four seed, which means they're not going to see Georgia right away. And I don't care who it is, even if it's Alabama. If I'm Ohio State and I'm playing the way I'm playing right now, there's no reason they can't go win a semifinal game. And then you're in the national championship game. What more do you want, right? I mean, let's be realistic about our expectations here.
I'm with you 1,000%, Brendan. I mean, you look at yesterday's college football games. Majority of the top 25 teams, most of the teams gave up points. I mean, that's what happens. Like, you're going to have, Mississippi State and Auburn play yesterday, 43-34. Even whatever game you want to look at, just grab a game. Alabama beat New Mexico State 59-3. Really? Like, Alabama beat New Mexico State 59-3. Okay, great. All right, it was a great defensive effort by them. Michigan State wouldn't move the ball against Mount Union right now. I mean, like, let's be real who we're talking about. And I know, Brendan, you threw up a little bit when I said that, but just using it as a reason to look at, like, this team's way ahead of schedule. And all we've talked about all year is that this Ohio State team is not the team. Like, they're not there yet. They're not there yet. They're not there yet. Well, guys, we're in November. We got 2 games left with Michigan State and Michigan, a potential Big Ten Conference Championship game, and like you alluded to, a college football playoff game. Who's not to say these guys can win 4 more? That's not crazy.
No.
And trust me, the rest of the country, every college football team in the country, if you told them tomorrow they get to go play Ohio State, none of them are excited about it.
No.
Including Georgia. Georgia doesn't want to play them. I mean, Georgia's eventually going to probably have to play them, but they don't want to play them. They're looming. They know they're very talented. Think about this yesterday, and I think this was a great job by Greg
McElroy. Yep.
Yeah, Greg McElroy yesterday made a comment.
Greg, I think, right?
Yeah, Greg. Yeah, Greg made a comment yesterday. There are 10 players in the country on the Blitzenkopf Award. It's gone to the best receiver in the country. Ohio State has 3 players, has 3 guys on that list. That means 33% of the award that goes to the best wide receiver in the country. Ohio State has 3 players on it. I mean, literally, it's absolutely absurd right now. CJ Stroud, he's not there yet. What do you want from him? He's a freshman. He's playing out of his mind. Yes. Would you like to see Ohio State shut people out? Would you like to see Zach Harrison and Tariq Smith slapping hands behind the quarterback every time there's a pass where they meet there? And, oh, my goodness. I think people forget going into yesterday's game, this defensive line still leads the country in sacks.
Yeah.
It's not like it's some abysmal defensive line. Yesterday, did you walk away from it and go, man, wow, what a day for them against a very average offensive line at Purdue? Take into account, Purdue sat there all day, not sitting in the pocket all day. When they got ready for this game, they watched the film. They saw this defensive line. They looked at their offensive line. And they have 2 guys that coach the offensive line. Dale Williams is one of them. Dale's a great person. He's from St. Ignatius High School in Cleveland, Ohio. Dale's jumped all over the country. He's coached everywhere. And Dale's the O-line coach for Purdue. Dale grew up at Independence, went to St. Michael's. Dale's a great guy. Great guy. I have a great relationship with him. All right. Way too much information you need to know. His mom makes a good pierogi. But anyways. I guarantee you, Dale went in and talked when they looked down, they went through this. I guarantee you they're watching the film and they go, there's no way we're blocking these guys. So we have to throw the ball quickly. Catch and release, catch and release, catch and release. 7-man protection, catch and release, catch and release. And that's what they did yesterday. They didn't have him sit back there and pat the football and wait. What they did was they said, we're going to play coverage. Why did Ohio State play coverage? Because they knew they weren't going to get home as much. They weren't going to get home as much because the quarterback's going to get rid of the ball. He was told yesterday, hey, just throw the ball away. Don't take a hit. Don't take a sack. Don't take a hit. Don't take a sack. And, they rotate in the Plummer kid for the one play. Thanks, Plummer. Appreciate you. For the fumble on the play action. It should have been a play action is what it looked like. The running back, because the way the offensive line was blocking it, they were not blocking a run. They were blocking play action. So I think the quarterback was wrong on it. But it's important to see that this defense basically said, we're going to keep everything in front of us. And they did. They did it. And, yeah, would you like to see them choke these guys out where it's, and I think, Perry, you mentioned that you're up 35-7 or 42-10. Yeah, that's good. You want to continue to do that. But what happens is it becomes to a one-faceted game where they're going to throw the ball every single play. And now you say, do you give up a play where they hit this touchdown play on us? They hit this touchdown play on us. I really think Ryan Day wanted to get out of the game. And he knew that they were going to throw these little short passes. Hey, give them yards, give them yards, give them yards. Nobody's ever won a football game because they out-yarded the other team. It happens every week. It happens every single week in college football. You'll see games where you go, hey, and I've been on that side. I've been on that side as an offensive coach where you're like, man, we outgained them by 150 yards. But at the end of the day, if you don't score more points, does it really matter how many yards the team gets? Does it matter how many first downs they get? Especially when you scored 59 points and probably, like Coach Brohm said yesterday, left those points on the field. It's a really interesting way to look at it. I'm not saying Ryan Day got in the headset and was like, all right, just play coverage. But maybe he did. Maybe he did say, hey, let's just play coverage. Let's just let these guys not get this game. Let them hit a couple big plays, and we'll live to see the next game, and we'll get ready to go play Michigan State.
This guy, Deplorable, I don't know if he's trolling me or not. He says you guys are gaslighting and straw manning the fans. We're making legitimate concerns about the defense. I'm trying to give credence to the fact. I understand. I get it. When you give up nearly 500 yards of offense and when you allow 31 points to be scored, I can understand why there's a frustration. You play to win the game, as Herm Edwards you used to say, and as we joked about in the preview. And it doesn't always have to be about being perfect in all aspects of the game. If it's part of the luxury that you have if your offense is historically good. I mean, this is a group at Ohio State right now offensively. I can't even believe that we're talking about this, but they have a chance to be the best offense in Buckeye history. That is not hyperbole. That's not exaggeration. Statistically, by the end of the year, they very well could be the best offense ever at Ohio State. Think about the offensive players that have come through this program. When your team is achieving at the level that they are, I don't want to say that defense doesn't matter. It's about playing the game the right way. You don't have to have a suffocating, unbeatable defense when your offense is clicking. When the offense isn't playing well, when they're having a tough game, you need your defense to step up a little bit. And to their credit, when Ohio State had a season low in yards 2 weeks ago against Penn State and a season low in points last week against Nebraska, the defense played pretty well, right? They showed they were reliable. When Ohio State got beat up by Oregon in week 2, just flat out beat up, that defense then and where the defense is right now, Ohio State gave up 35 points to Oregon and 31 points to Purdue. Those two defenses are on two different planets. It has nothing to do with the number of points or the number of yards given up. It's about assignment football. It's about understanding the scheme that you're running. It's something as simple as just watching guys' angle of pursuit in the secondary. Does Ohio State have an All-American in its secondary right now? Probably not. Freshman All-American maybe in Denzel Burke. But, look, Bryson Shaw is not going to win any All-American awards, but he has taken huge steps forward as this season's gone along. If you watch the tape from week 2 and you watch him the last couple of weeks, he's playing at a far better level. And is it good enough to win a national championship? We're going to find out. Again, I realize the competition the Buckeyes have in front of them. They got some tough games coming up. Let's not get too far ahead here. But the reality is every single team that is getting ready to play Ohio State has to figure out how to stop the offense. And when you have Big Ten coaches like Mike Locksley saying, Ohio State's receivers look like they were falling out of airplanes, they were so open. And you've got Jeff Brohm saying, we were lucky to hold them to 59 points. I mean, to me, like, the defense just becomes a secondary concern for me. I to the point where I'm just not bothered by it. I'll be bothered by it if the offense can't get out to a big lead. But that hasn't been the case, an awful lot this year.
And Brendan, I agree with you. I'm when Ohio State has needed this defense to step up, they have stepped up. They've stepped up when they needed them to step up, minus the Oregon game. Like, they really have. Like, when there's been times where it's been tough games, like the Nebraska game last week, they really played good defensive football. And I know Ryan Day is more concerned about scoring points than stopping people scoring points. He loves, think about this. He's playing his video game every Saturday. He knows he's got 2/3 of this great receiver core going to be gone next year. Like, they're not coming back. Like, as much as we would love to see Garrett Wilson come back and walk on senior day, I don't know if unless there's somebody that's going to sign a contract for $45 million for him to walk on senior day. So, like, Raising Cane's, you better sell a lot of chicken fingers or whoever else is these endorsement deals that they're doing. If somebody really wants to see him come back and play, realistically,
You got a good pierogi company?
A great pierogi company, yeah. The pierogi lady out of Akron. I don't know if she's slinging $45 million to Garrett Wilson to keep him around. But what I do think is important, it's imperative that the Buckeyes try to score these points while they can with this group. And I really do feel yesterday, like I said before, I think Ryan Day told them to be more passive. I think he got, hey, Matt, like, just keep him in front of him, don't give up the big play. And that's what they did. They gave up one big touchdown play, and that was the one where you mentioned the aforementioned Bryson Shaw. They were in a 2-by-2 set. They brought the one guy over on the over, and the safety, he got caught. His hips, if you saw it, his hips got locked. He got caught because his eyes went to number 2 on the front side. And then when the through route came back on the backside, he couldn't adjust in time. And Denzel Burke's going to play, cover up because he's playing. Where he was playing, he played outside leverage on that one. So he means he's funneling it inside to the safeties. When he goes to funnel inside, Shaw gets locked. He can't go with it. And they give him a touchdown. It happens. It happens to everybody in the country when situations like that happen. But at the end of the day, it was Ohio State jumped out so fast. I don't think the defense felt that pressure to have to go play and to choke these guys out. To give the fans what they're talking about right now, what they'd like to see is probably a defense that chokes these guys out and keeps that game at 7 points or keeps it at 10 points or keeps it at 13 points. And now you look at it and you go, wow, Ohio State won 59-13. The difference was Purdue's offense still had fight in them.
Sure.
Purdue's offense continued to go. These other games that you see where these blowouts happen, it's not that the defense is choking these guys out as much. It's really these kids quit. The kids quit. David Bell's sitting there going, okay, I can still maybe get a 200-yard game in his head. I'm going to make a play where Denzel Burke's not going to tackle me and I'm going to take off. Didn't happen. We've got this play or that play. Like, Brom's going to go score points because he's going to have to go back to his athletic director and go, all right, at the end of the year, what are you doing? Well, we're going to fire all 3 defensive coordinators again, because why? Like, we just didn't, but we can score points. And that's what he's going to go show these guys. And that's really what they did yesterday. They continued to score. They continued to run their ball, run the football as they tried to. Once again, Ohio State choked out the run, did a nice job of it. And what they did was they forced them to go throw the ball, which is what Purdue does really, really well. And they made some completions. They cut a couple guys here, hit a couple guys there, but they didn't give up the big plays. And that's where I can't throw this defense under the bus. Now if the game was 31-3 and Ohio State couldn't move the ball offensively and they played that way defensively, I've been really, really disappointed to see that. I think there's 2 different types of defenses that you've seen Matt Barnes call. You've seen one where he's called it, where he said, hey, we got a lead. I'm not going to give up that lead. I'm going to let them go, continue, and then eventually they're going to make a mistake. Then there was the Matt Barnes defense that's aggressive, where you're calling A and B gap blitzes, where you're bringing nickels into the blitz package. And how many times did you see the guys? How many times did you see Ohio State blitz yesterday?
Not many.
They didn't. They didn't. There was a couple adapt and adjust ones, but really, there's really not, you call it green dogging where you're waiting and he's reading. All right. His guy stays in. All right, I'm coming. There was really not a lot of it. And the Buckeyes really played a very basic defense yesterday.
I think they just didn't respect Purdue's ability to run the football.
They
right?
did not.
To me, that's what was impressive about Purdue's offense. The Buckeyes knew they were one-dimensional. They were averaging 77 rushing yards per game going into yesterday's game. And Ohio State has one of the better rush defenses in the country this year. Ohio State essentially said, we don't respect your ability to run against us. We're going to force you to beat us through the air. And by doing that, we're going to drop 8 so that you can't beat us over the top because we know you can't stop our offense. They knew they were going to win. I'm good with that. I'm good with that game plan. Next week, you have to pay a lot more attention to the run, right? Probably going to sell out on the run a lot more often because Michigan State, that is what they do. That is their DNA with Kenneth Walker. And frankly, Michigan State's offensive tackles are not great. And I think Thorne's going to be in some trouble if they let him sit in the pocket for too long. So different game plan next week. One other thing to point out that maybe we just haven't talked about him in a long time. Maybe gets forgotten in this whole thing. I mean, Josh Proctor's hurt. He's out for the whole season. And maybe there's a reason Bryson Shaw wasn't the starting safety week 1. Again, I mean, it's not perfect. I'm not sitting here and I'm not a Bryson Shaw apologist. Bryson seems like a good kid. And actually, I asked him yesterday in the postgame press conference where he's gotten better. And I was hoping that he was going to be I was hoping he would point out things that he feels like he's improved. And it was like he talked about the things that he didn't do well enough. And I was like, well, that's not really what I asked. I appreciated that he was taking accountability for it. But he's got to keep growing for sure. I don't think Ohio State, when they get to the college football playoff, I feel comfortable enough expecting that that's going to happen. They've still got to win 3 more games, but I think it's going to happen. They're not going to see an offense like they saw last year in Alabama. They're not going to see an offense like they saw or like what anybody saw 2 years ago in LSU or what the Buckeyes saw with Trevor Lawrence. I just don't know if there's that elite offense. I mean, look, Alabama's offense is very good, but they're not as good as they were last year. They do not have the talent at quarterback or at receiver that they had a year ago. I think this defense can get it done on a big stage. So I'm just not ready to – I'm not ready to get overly concerned yet just because of yesterday's scheme.
100%. The defense has played really well. And when they need to, and they executed a game plan yesterday, and they allowed Ohio State to continue to score. And I think when you capitalize on those turnovers, when you make them, Purdue didn't give them a lot of opportunities to have those turnovers. Really there was guys there. There were guys there to make those plays, and that's what good defenses do. And I'm not going to say that this is a steel curtain. I'm not going to say that you're going to go back and go, man, the 2021. Silver Bowl. Holy smokes, what a crew. But there's a lot of good young players on the defense that are going to continue to get better. And, as this offense, because this offense is going to be, this is the best year of this offense. I know going forward, we think Stroud's very good. We think Travion Henderson's, generational. We think that Jaxon Smith-Njigba is also an outstanding player, and going to end up starting to, yesterday, Ohio State started with Mitch Rossi at tight end. For a blocking aspect of it. But, Kate Stover is going to be a really good player. As you're going down this list and looking at this, Mayan Williams had a phenomenal game yesterday. Played really well, ran the football well. You're going to see Ohio State probably next year at this time. We're going to look and we're going to be really disappointed at the defense because they're going to run the football more than they do anything else next year. They're going to set up play action for C.J. Stroud. They're going to work to Jaxon Smith-Njigba and Egbuka and all these guys, Marvin Harrison Jr. These are the guys going forward that they're going to work the ball to. And probably some kid that we're not mentioning right now that's playing high school football that turns out to be a stud when he gets here. But you say all that because next year this defense is going to have to be better. This defense is going to have to be, and they're going to be smart. They're going to be a year better. You're going to have Steel Chambers. Steel Chambers is going to be on the linebacker watch list, going forward. The defensive line, these young guys inside are playing really, really good football. So it's going to be, and Jack Sawyer is going to be able to fill in where Tariq Smith goes. Let's say Zach Harrison goes to the league. And I know I'm jumping into the offseason stuff right now, but this is where the defense is going to get better and continue to grow. And they're just gonna mature more. I mean, the secondary, nobody's leaving except Seven Banks, I think, right? Seven Banks is a senior. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
He's the one senior back there, and Banks.
Marcus Williamson will be gone too. He was back for a fifth year.
But Seven Banks and Marcus Williamson leave. Aren't going to be day 1 draft picks. Aren't going to be day 2 draft. They're going to be guys down the road. They'll eventually end up in camp somewhere. But all that being said, you're going to have these young guys that have been playing in a ton of reps in big time games that you're going to look back at and go, wow, I'm really glad this defense is going to come to fruition. The next year at this time, we're going to be talking about the defense, and we're talking about, man, I wish the offense still had Olave and still had Garrett Wilson, but they're still going to have some really good receivers. And Ryan Day has put together a blueprint that's going to be really, really fun to watch.
Can we talk Big Ten for a minute?
Absolutely.
All right. So, I mean, obviously the big game yesterday outside of the one in Columbus took place in Happy Valley. I guess give Michigan credit. They got it done. It was a little lower scoring, I guess, than I had predicted, but it was as competitive as I thought it would be. I think the biggest takeaway I had from that game, if you watched Ohio or if you watched Penn State and Michigan, Michigan's defensive line is pretty darn good, and I realize Penn State's offensive line is okay. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson isn't going to sneak up on anybody. Ojabo is he's a real deal, and so I think Ohio State in 2 weeks, they're going to have their hands full with those defensive ends.
I mean, yeah, they're going to have a game plan, and those guys are both better than Karlaftis. They're going to be more impactful.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to have a better game plan, and this is where being able to balance running the football and taking shots when you need to take them. Because if they sit back there and try to be calculated in their shots against Michigan, there are going to be times that they get home. And then you go back to the Michigan State game. The one plan you don't want to do is all the boot stuff, the boot where the Michigan State game. Michigan State thought they'd be like, all right, we're not going to sit back in the pocket. We're going to move the pocket. Well, Hutchinson just kind of sat there and waited and just kind of mirrored the quarterback. I think he ended up with 2 sacks on the day based on that play. So I know Ohio State's going to watch the film. They're not going to go, oh, we're going to naked and boot him to death. They're going to have ways to set up 7-man protections and still be able to get shots, still be able to let those guys go work. But yeah, what we've learned is Michigan's really good defensively. Offensively, I still think they're a very average team. The one big explosive play they had was the one to Eric All yesterday where the DB fell down and Eric All took off the tight end up the sideline. He's playing better football for them. He's a local kid from Fairfield, Ohio, who was actually, it's kind of weird. Fairfield's had some big time 4-star and 5-star kids recently. Jaxon Carman, one that went to Clemson as the offensive lineman, and then Eric All, the other, their other big time 4-star guy who was the tight end, who's up at Michigan. So Fairfield, for some reason, just doesn't like to send their kids to to send their kids to Ohio State. But also that could be argued that Ohio State really, at the end of the day, didn't want those guys too. So,
sure.
But it was interesting to see them from there. And then I think Michigan State, and not to change the subject, Brendan, but, then you go watch Michigan State yesterday against Maryland, who just didn't look like the number, 3 ranked team, didn't look like the 4 ranked team. They were better than Maryland, but so were a lot of people. I think they played above Maryland, but they let Maryland kind of hang around a little bit longer than people thought, especially at home in East Lansing. They're coming into this game right now, and they definitely had one eye on looking on Ohio State, looking on the scoreboard probably during the game to see, well, how good are they? And then you go see them just dismantle Purdue. Michigan State's coming into this game probably trying to figure out who they are, whether or not their head coach is going to be there. There's going to be a lot of interesting storylines coming up here.
I totally agree that they were a bit underwhelming yesterday. One more thing on the Penn State front. I don't want to be accusatory. I don't like swimming in waters that I'm not perfect in. So this is why we have you. What was James Franklin doing yesterday? I mean, there were some moments where it was just like, I don't understand. The fake punt was fine. That didn't bother me. Why are you running a fake field goal if you're going to go if from the 2-yard line? If you're going to go for it, why don't you just go for it? You bring out a good offensive unit and drop a good play and go for it. There were a few instances yesterday where I was just like, I don't really get it with him.
I think the reason they called the fake field goal in that situation was nobody on the planet thought they were going to run a fake field goal there. including myself when I watched it. I think the reason they didn't line up with their offense is they proved 4 weeks ago, from the 2-yard line, they struggle a little bit.
Well, that's
you remember
true.
They went into 9 overtimes against Illinois' defense, and then you put Michigan's defense, who's pretty good out there. I don't know if he had the faith in his offense to go get that. Do you kick the field goal and get the points there? You go kick the field goal and get the points there. Is it a different game potentially? And after the game, he said, "Would I have called it again?" Yes, I would have called it again. What made that play look that much more just awful was when the kicker decided to become a football player. When he tried to just run, cut back, like you're gonna juke this scholarship defensive player. Like, come on, man. Like, give me a break. Like, when you put those plays in, and I've been there when you put those types of plays in, you tell the kicker, like, hey, if it's not there, just get down. Like, don't be Superman. Don't try to make it this incredible play. Just go. Like, go. Like, that's it. Like, just go. If it's not there, like, hit the ground. That's on me. I'm the coach. I'm the one that called it. Don't be upset. Don't be dejected. And that's probably what he told them, after the play, not before the play. And that's where, when you're as a coach, you put these young men in situations. You put these young men in situations to execute. You sit in their living rooms. You talk to their parents. You talk to their high school coaches. You talk to their friends. You talk to everybody that's involved in this entire process. And you promise those people that you're going to put their son, their brother, their friend, their player, their nephew, their grandson, whoever it may be, in the greatest possible situation to succeed, not only on the football field, but in life. When you call plays like that, are you really giving them that ability? Are you really following through with what you're saying? And I think yesterday that was kind of one of those things where you see Franklin kind of go crazy on the sideline, and really you see two of the more embarrassing head football coaches in the Big Ten. I mean, Jim Harbaugh watching it, he's a clown show. I mean, he's a clown show.
I don't understand.
I mean, he's trying to spot the ball, and then he's got 6 minions behind him that are doing the same thing. He wears cleats because he wants to be like Bo Schembechler. Like, it's a lot of, at the end of the day, like, Ryan Day's going to show up in the same hat, the same pullover. Oh, it's cold today, I'll throw a jacket on. He's just going to worry about coaching football. And I think that's where it's really important and setting his guys up for success. You saw 2 coaches yesterday that made some decisions that probably didn't set their guys up for success. And going forward, it makes you question, are they getting too cute? And that's where, like you said, Brendan, like, line up with your offense and go play it. If you don't have the faith in it, kick the field goal. Kick the field goal,
Yep.
Get 3 points. Points are points. They add up. Yes. If they hit on that, everyone goes, wow, what a play. Great job. But in that moment, I didn't understand the call.
Yeah. There were a couple of other games around the country yesterday that certainly opened some eyes. Looking at you, Florida, and I don't know. I mean, is it just me, or did it not look good to you that that they put out a video on social media of like the whole team dancing in the locker room and yucking it up and having a great time? Like, celebrate your win. I get that. Yeah, you won the game, and it was obviously a hard-fought game, so enjoy that. But like, you almost lost to an FCS program, and it took a 70-point effort for you to win the game. I just feel like that's probably not a great look for you to be, letting it rip in a day where you're just inviting criticism. I don't know.
I agree. There was a lot that happened in Florida this past week. Dan Mullen got rid of John Hevesy, who literally is his longest tenured coach. John Hevesy has been with Dan Mullen his entire coaching career as a head coach. John's the O-line coach, and John's a very good tactical O-line coach. Probably gets knocked a little bit in the recruiting game, which is why Florida is what everyone nationally is saying. Florida's not recruiting the right type of players, guys that have, what you want on a Saturday and the rest of the week. That video that got sent out yesterday of them dancing in the locker room, I've been part of this, where the head coach is supposed to sign off on everything on the social media account. There's probably times the head coach just goes, hey, if we win, put it out, let it go. I've been a part of wins where, like, you barely win a game and, like, we put out a graphic that's, destroyed them, or you troll the other team. Like, I don't really get that. I know recruits like it. Recruits may click on it. They may say, hey, oh, man, Florida, like, man, it's live. They got the jump man on their jersey. They dance after the game, after they beat a 500 FCS team, like, oh, at home. Yeah, I don't agree always with that. I think sometimes it gets caught up in the recruiting game a little bit more. Instead of posting that, why don't your coaches get on the phone and go hit your top recruits after the game? Let them know that, like, hey, the reason we want you to come to the Swamp is because these games in the future, like, that's going to be a 70-0 game or a 77-10 game, and you're going to be dancing in that locker room after the game because you just destroyed these guys the way that we know how to do it, the way the Florida way knows how to do it. That's where they're missing the boat right now. They're relying, and a lot of coaches, lazy coaches, will rely on social media to do recruiting for them. At the end of the day, it may like a clip, may like something like that. It comes back to that relationship you develop with them. And that's where Dan Mullen and his staff, they have not developed the relationships with these kids. And that's why they quit on them as well. You develop that relationship in the recruiting process. And then when they step foot on the campus, that's when you really start developing the relationship. I think sometimes it gets backwards. It's you go recruit this kid. Oh, we got the 4-star here. Great. Then you don't develop the relationship once the kid's on campus. That's when they quit on you. That's when they don't play for you. That's when they start looking around and going, man, this coach is garbage. This coach is trash. And they hear that from everybody. It's really been an interesting dynamic going forward. And no one would have thought Miami and Florida State and Florida, the big three, would be this bad. But what's happened is people have come in, they've recruited the state of Florida, and kids now can get on a plane, they can get on a car, they can get anywhere pretty quick. And Florida, Texas, Georgia, Ohio, and California really are the most recruited states in the country. And when those states get recruited, people come in, they fly in, they go see people. When they go to pluck that talent out of there, those kids don't feel like they're leaving home because they develop a relationship with these coaches that are so strong, that are so bonded that they feel like, hey, I'm part of my family is going to be there. And that's where the great recruiters do that. It's not a bullshit thing. Sorry, language. It's a true, genuine relationship that you develop with a family, with a young man. And it doesn't end that day. And you can ask kids that have had great coaches that they love. Those coaches still reach out on certain days, on birthdays, on holidays. When you need something, they'll reach out. They'll touch base with you. That's where those relationships are developed. And I think sometimes right now, the trend in college football, we're seeing that both sides are using each other. And it's kind of sad to see that. I know, and I was in it for 13 years. When I first started and started developing those relationships, I genuinely wanted to help those guys out. I wanted to see them. One of the greatest impacts of my life was Joe Perella. Joe Perella was my head coach in college for 1 year. For 1 year, he was my head coach. He and I developed a relationship, not only from the recruiting process, but with his wife, Kathy, until the day that he passed away about a year ago. And when Coach Perella passed away, his wife asked me to do his eulogy. And it was really fitting when we carried Coach to his final resting place. It was all guys that played for him at different places that carried him out. And that's the kind of relationship you develop with your players. That's where Joe Perella was really, really talented at it. And he's just one of many coaches that have done that. My high school coaches developed a great relationship with me. They believed in me. They trusted me. They taught me that I could do more than just what I thought I could do with myself. And to this day, still reach out and still talk to me. The young men that I've served over these years, it's the same thing. And I know this is a long-winded response to what happened in Florida, but when you're a college football coach, whenever you're in charge of mentoring people, this is great teachers, great coaches, great mentors across society, you become a fabric of that young man's life. And I think the Kirk Herbst, we talked about it the other day, was, Lee Corso always says, I may not be the richest guy in the world, but Lee did pretty well financially with number 2 pencils and ESPN and everything else. But you drop little pieces of yourself all over the country. And I don't know if the kids that are at Florida right now feel that those coaches have dropped little pieces of themselves with them. And when you've done that and you grow that way, winning on Saturdays and winning in life, it just becomes really natural. And I think that's where you have to see these guys continue to do that. Whoever takes that job this year, because I'm assuming Dan Mullen's probably going to move on, or they're going to move on from Dan. Whoever takes that job, they have to bring in a staff that's going to do that. And when that staff goes in and they can develop those guys and develop great relationships with them, it's amazing how much different those kids' lives are.
This is why we do this on Sunday morning. That was a nice Sunday morning soul cleansing. I feel good. Sunday mornings with Tommy. By the way, since Treasure the Torah just put this on here, and I appreciate that, I was going to bring this up at the very end, but Ed Rogers, who's been really active today, and I appreciate you for being active. Ed, that's a bad take out of you, man. It's not too early for a Christmas tree. It's in my family, as soon as Halloween is over, Christmas tree is fair game. And The one you see behind me is the only one that's up in this room. There is one other already up, and there will be 2 others up in the fairly near future. We're a Christmas family. Definitely love the Christmas time. It's better than the sign that's been over my shoulder that I haven't decorated that says something like "Hello, sweet summertime" or whatever. That probably needed to be taken down a little while ago.
Goodbye, sweet summertime. It's Christmas time.
Exactly. All right, let's wrap just your general final thought yesterday, your biggest takeaway on what you learned from Ohio State's win.
The Buckeyes have a balanced run game. They did go to the gap scheme runs that we talked about. They ran a little bit more of the duo play yesterday. Mayan Williams has a really good feel for it, as does Travion Henderson. So to be able to run zone plays and gap scheme runs, it also sets up your play action, which was really good. We also learned that the Buckeye defensive line does not have to get home every single play for the Buckeye defense to keep things in front of them. I think Steel Chambers, my takeaway again is Steel Chambers is going to be a guy. I mean, Steel Chambers every single week looks better and better. Tommy Eichenberg's playing incredibly better. It's just fun to watch this linebacker group who literally after week 1, I remember on this exact podcast going, oh boy, it's going to be a long year. The power of development, the power of growth, and really, credit to Al Washington for him growing that team. The offensive line leaned on these people. They moved their feet. They displaced them against their will. They're going to have to continue to do that. If they do that, this Ohio State team can go above and beyond what anybody dreamt they could be at the beginning of the season.
Looking forward to seeing how things go this week. I know it's a big one coming up with Michigan State, and then the rivalry game the week after that. Ohio State certainly looks like they are playing their best football here. If yesterday was any indication, should be a lot of fun moving forward. My biggest takeaway, I think, is simply that Garrett Wilson is, in my opinion, the best receiver in the country. I said this on our instant analysis post-game show yesterday that I was kind of like 1A, 1B all year long with Olave and Wilson, trying to figure out which of the two I thought were better. And it ain't by much, but I think what Garrett Wilson showed us yesterday was awfully special, especially his second touchdown catch. I mean, it was perfect. That was absolutely unfiltered perfection. Pretty darn impressive. So I looking forward to seeing some big things coming from him as well. All right, that'll wrap up our What We Learned segment on Buckeye Breakdown. We certainly enjoyed being with you again on Sunday morning, and we'll try to do this again next week. I'm going to give you a heads up. It's going to be a little earlier next week. I got a lot going on, and I am, in a totally unrelated note, I am broadcasting play-by-play for the Division II Field Hockey National Championship. Be driving all over Timbuktu next weekend. So I'll probably be doing it from a hotel in Pittsburgh, but we'll get up early on Sunday morning. And if you want to watch it after the fact, we'll do that too. In the meantime, if you're a D3 college football fan, perhaps check out NCAA.com today. Got the D3 football selection show. That'll be a lot of fun here. I think it comes out at 5:30 tonight. So all over the Midwest. Have some fun.
Best of the biz, Brendan.
Yeah, I appreciate you. All right, brother. Talk to you next week. Thanks for your time this morning. Ohio State 59, Purdue 31. Follow us on our social media channels at BuckeyesNow SI, and we'll see you again real soon on Buckeye Breakdown.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness, is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.